Today, since we've been working with integers, positive and negative numbers, we are going to talk a little bit about graphing. And this is something that we talked about earlier this year, and we've worked with a little bit this year, but up until this point, all of the graphing that we've done has only been with positive numbers. Now that we're working with integers, negative numbers, we're going to expand our graphing a little bit and talk about and practice graphing with negative numbers in the mix. So we're adding a layer onto something that we've already talked about. First, a little bit of quick review, just to remind you. So the numbers that let us mark and locate points on a coordinate plane, so remember coordinate plane is our fancy math word for a coordinate graph. So those combination of numbers, each of those is an ordered pair. Pair, because it takes pair of numbers, and ordered, because order matters. So just to remind you, you've got some space down here where you're going to write down what I'm writing down. Each of these always has two numbers. The first one is X, the second one is Y. And just to remind you, X controls movement side to side because that's the direction the x-axis runs. And the second number, the y coordinate, tells you how far you're moving up or down because that's the direction the y-axis runs. And when we're working with ordered pairs, all ordered pairs are always measured from the origin, which is the middle, or 0, 0 on the graph. So when you're measuring left, right, up, down, you're always measuring from 0, 0. When we expand our graph so that we have negative numbers, we get something that's called a 4-quadrant coordinate plane, and it looks kind of like this guy right here. So there's a little bit of vocabulary that comes into play when you're working with a 4-quadrant graph. First of all, this idea of quadrants. So quad literally means 4. So you could see the 4 pieces on the graph: top left, top right, bottom left, bottom right. So that's why they're called quadrants, because there's 4 of them. So first of all, we are going to label some basic things on your graph just to remind you. So remember, this is the x-axis. This is the y-axis, just some quick reminders so we don't get them confused. And we were just talking about the origin, but that is the origin right there, 0, 0. Now, quadrants. Quadrants we keep track of using numbers, but we write the numbers using Roman numerals. I'm not sure who decided we were going to use Roman numerals, but it was decided a long time ago, and it has become the standard for math. So you should be aware of which quadrant is which. So quadrant 1 is the quadrant that we use the most often, and that's the quadrant where everything's positive, because a lot of real life situations happen only with positive numbers. So we use that part of the graph more than anything. So that means that this top right quadrant is quadrant 1. But again, we don't write it with the number 1, we write it with the Roman numeral for 1. So this is quadrant 1. And the Roman numeral for 1 is a capital I. So from here, they are just numbered off in order. The only thing you have to remember is which direction do I number them off, clockwise or counterclockwise. So that just comes down to remembering it. So the way they're numbered is counterclockwise. So counterclockwise basically means the opposite way that the hands on a clock would turn. So the hands on a clock turn this way, which means we're going to number them the opposite direction. So we're actually going to number them going this way. So that means this quadrant 2 is going to be over here. So this is quadrant 2. The Roman numeral for 2 is I. And then we just keep going around the graph. So the next one over would be quadrant 3. And the last one is quadrant 4. And the Roman numeral for 4 is IV. So those are quadrants. And the reason they're numbered off is because sometimes it helps to have the name of the quadrant if you're talking about a specific quadrant. That way you're not going, that quadrant over there, you can say, this is in quadrant 2 or this is in quadrant 4. So that's why we have quadrant names. So that's basic vocabulary for a 4-quadrant graph. Now, a little bit of quick practice thinking about how to use this. So we're actually going to work with this backwards. So we have a little graph here. So if you remember, the first number tells us our side-to-side measurement. So how far left or right do we have to go from the origin? And the second number is our up or down. How far up or down do we have to go from the origin? So this problem tells us, okay, write the coordinates for A and B. So in order to do that, we have to figure out how far up, down, left, right we're going from the origin. So if we start here, and if we think left or right, because that's what the first number controls, we have to go right 2, and that's positive. So it's like a number line. Right is positive, left is negative, just like the numbers lines we've been working with. So it would be 2 to the right, and then we have to go up 3. So up is positive, down is negative. Think kind of like a thermometer. The higher up you are, the hotter it is. Those are higher numbers. The smaller, the lower down you are, the colder it is. Those are smaller numbers or negative numbers. So the coordinates for A, correct coordinates for A would be 2, 3. So it also asks for B. So if we wanted to do B, actually, I'm going to, since we're marking on the same graph, switch colors just for the sake of avoiding confusion. So B, we need to figure out how far left or right we go first. So to get to B, I have to go right 1, so that's positive 1. But now to get to B, I'm not going to go up, I'm going to go down. So down would be negative. So I have to go down 2. So that means B's y or up and down coordinate would be negative 2. So the coordinates for B are 1, negative 2. Last part of this asks us to mark some points on a graph. So if I wanted to mark point C, so negative 2 is my left-right number. Since this is negative, that means I'm going to go left 2. And the second number is positive, so positive means up. So I'm going to start at the origin, and this coordinate is telling me to go left 2 and up 4. So if I do that, so left 2 and then up 4, that's going to put me right there. And then I can mark that with a C. So that's how you plot a point on a graph. The last one, point D. So this one is telling me, so this is a 0. So 0 means don't move left or right. So I'm just going to stay put. But the second number, this is our up and down coordinate, since that's negative, is telling me to go down 5. So this is telling me don't move left or right, but go down 5. So if I start at the origin, I don't move left or right, I just go down 5. I'm going to have to extend my graph a tiny little bit, but that's going to put me right there, negative 5. So that's D. So if you have a 0, that's basically telling you don't move that direction. So don't move left or right, or don't move up or down. So that is how we take what we've already been talking about with coordinates earlier this year and expand it to work with negative numbers. So you should have your notes outline filled in at this point with your examples and your vocabulary and graphing reminders. What you're going to work on today is some graphing practice. So one thing that you need to be able to do moving forward is accurately graph on a 4-quadrant graph using negative numbers. So you are going to work on a graphing picture today that is going to help you practice being accurate when you graph. So when you're ready,